Our next topic is social enterprise, and looking at how can your community foster social enterprise and support that locally. We're going to invite our panelists to come forward, and again we have a student team who are going to talk about work that they did with a group in Hastings County, and then a few panelists talking about other initiatives happening throughout the region. So we'll invite Wenjue to come forward and sit on the panel. All of you can come on forward and take a seat. So our first speakers are going to be Dina and Kate. They're both graduating students, and they're going to talk about work that they did with Hastings Community Care.
Thanks very much, Jeff, and thanks for having us out tonight. It's very nice to see the crowd of people out here today interested in this. So my name is Dina Ali, and this is my colleague, Kate Jaczko, and we're both B.Comm students here at the School of Business. And we're here today to talk to you about our Queen's Business Consulting project, similar to Nick and Amy's, on the Community Care North Hastings organization. So here's just a quick agenda of what we're going to run through today. It's going to be very simple, exciting. So just a quick background on the client. We actually have Gord MacDonald here with us today, who's the director of the organization, so I'm sure he'll be better suited to speak to his organization over us. So we won't go into too much detail, but essentially Community Care North Hastings, or CCNH, is a not-for-profit organization that works with seniors in the region to help them through their transition process of trying to keep them in the home and everything like that. They do great work. We saw firsthand, and it was our pleasure to work with this organization. We really enjoyed it. Now, our objective from the QBC project was to provide CCNH with a set of recommendations to generate sustainable revenue generation models. Obviously, this was a difficult task given the demographics of the area that we'll outline further on, but we did really enjoy it. For the methodology, the first thing we did was actually had a discovery meeting with Gord and went over, what the purposes were and what we want to accomplish from our project. We also went forward in understanding CCNH's operations. So this was from a very technical standpoint through financial statements, budgets, and pricing structure. Next was the fun part, research, and Kate and I spent long hours looking into secondary research and best practices for different organizations, and also speaking with various industry experts and seeing what we could get from different perspectives. We then went forward with the consolidation and recommendations. So we analyzed the demographics in region and then proceeded to create our solutions and evaluate them against the decision matrix. And then we presented our report and solutions to the board of directors of CCNH. So the first thing was the financial analysis, and the key takeaways from here was essentially that CCNH is very reliant on funding, and government funding was transitioning to a state where it was starting to interfere with operations. So creating sustainable revenue generation models was very important at this point in time. We generated 9 models that we believed would generate sustainable revenue within the area. A lot of these models were complementary to one another, so we believed that these would work well together in generating revenue for the organization. We took into consideration, again, demographic variables and regional variables, and Kate will actually talk about some of the better models we presented forward.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dina. So basically, what we've decided to do today is just take you through three of the models that we've gone through for the organization. The first one is basically an expansion on the thrift stores that they currently have. So basically, CCNH operates 2 thrift stores, one in Bancroft and one in Cohill, both quite successful. So the idea here is to expand into a 3rd thrift store into a place called Moynes, which is just north of Bancroft. So obviously, the reason why we chose Moynes, it's sort of seen as a hub in the area in Hastings Highlands, and it has a lot of traffic flow going towards Bancroft. Also, there's a huge tourist influx, so those are some positives to the option. Furthermore, it's a core competency, so we know that the model works. And there is potential also for additional for additional government grants. Some weaknesses, obviously, this will require extensive capital, which CCNH doesn't currently have. So they would be quite reliant on government funding. Furthermore, it's difficult to estimate the propensity to buy from secondhand stores within the Hastings region. We did do a revenue potential estimate. It came to about $25,000. If you have any questions, we can address them later. Basically, it's a very high-level estimate based on the population and based on the current revenue generated by the stores in Bancroft and Cohill. The second model that we'll talk about today is a recipe book. So the idea being the best kept secrets of Bancroft in the recipe style. So one of the best parts about this is that it aligns with the core aligns with the core vision and goals of CCNH. It allows the clients to get involved with this. Basically, clients would pitch recipes, would get together, come up with a recipe book to sell to the community at large. So obviously, if it would be successful, it could be expanded into a series of recipe books. It's a great community initiative and also keeps up the public image. Some weaknesses, obviously, we can flip it around and look at the flip side of that. This is reliant on client involvement and being able to organize clients of the clients of the organization to do this. Furthermore, publishing fees can be extensive, so we could look into securing sponsorship for this. And lastly, the biggest problem is to secure multiple distribution channels to actually, once we have that book, to get it out to the community at large. And obviously, along with that comes potentially very high marketing costs, of course. So we estimated this to be about $17,000 of revenue. The last one that we'll talk about today is expansion to seniors fitness classes. So the idea would be to offer seniors fitness classes to the general public within Bancroft or within the region. Obviously, this aligns again with the core competencies of the organization and is an added service for CCNH. They can draw from the pre-existing client base that they currently have, which is about 1,000 people. There's also, when we discussed this with Gord, there is potential to get free rental space from within the area. And when we discussed this, there was quite a high demand for it as well and revenue potential. Some weaknesses that we addressed, obviously it's dependent on the location and it's seasonal as well, I'm sure. It's much more difficult to get people out in the winter, as I'm sure some of us can identify with. Furthermore, the need to hire a qualified instructor, someone who has experience in this kind, seniors fitness classes, could be a problem within the region as it's quite small. And there is obviously possible competition within the area. There is a Curves gym. And the amount of profit is clearly dependent on the space rental costs and availability. So sorry about this, but there is a slight typo on this slide. It's actually $36,000 in potential revenue. So some of the other potential solutions that we came up with, we won't go through them in details. We don't have enough time today, but newsletter advertising in the current existing newsletter that they have, coupon book, recycling initiative, recurring subscription donations, opening up a coffee store, bookstore, sort of chapters, Starbucks experience within Bancroft, and a tour boat on the York River in the region.
Thanks, Kate. So to complement our solutions, we decided to also look into awareness campaigns just to strengthen the current relationships in the community and also to use them paired with our solutions to generate awareness of the organization and what we are planning to do. So the first thing we came up with here was an open house for potential and existing donors. Have current donors come in, see what the organization is doing, and offer them a chance to kind of contribute what they think of the current practices and how they feel about it. And also give potential donors a chance to come in and see the great work that's being done and just really open the doors and open that transparency and be available to the people coming in. We also looked into thanking donors, so having personal calls from youth volunteers and honoring donors, perhaps through a live RSS feed on the website or on a plaque or something within the organization itself. But we believe that these thank yous are really going to get donations coming in and get people coming back. We also looked into a donor roundtable, so have people who are donating a certain amount be part of this roundtable to discuss current practices, look to better the organization, and see what changes can be made moving forward. And finally, we really wanted to tap into the youth base. So we thought of doing this through two ways. The first being looking into the youth nearby. So there's a high school actually within 5 minutes of the organization. And we really felt that some joint initiatives could be taken on there. High school students require volunteer hours, so there's a free base right there. We all had to go through it. And another part that we went through was social media. So getting our presence online, really creating that partnership between the youth and the elderly, because we believe that will strengthen ties within the community. Again, through our solutions, we considered key demographic variables such as the tourism influx. There's a big influx of tourists in the area within the summer months. It's a beautiful area to be, so we consider that going through our solutions. The aging population, the income base of the area, and the fact that the area is geographically remote, especially within the winter months. This generated some obstacles in our solutions. Keisha's going to quickly go over the decision matrix.
All right, so the very last thing that we just wanted to talk about quickly here, the way that we came about deciding which ones would possibly be the best. We had a series of criteria ranked, so they're just displayed up behind me. I don't know if you can see them, hopefully you can. And the 9 options were laid out across the top, and each of the decision criteria were given a weight of importance, and each option was given a score, and a final score was given. So obviously here you can see the thrift store expansion and the seniors fitness classes were the highest ranked here. And I think that concludes our presentation, but if you have any questions, we will discuss it in the question and answer period.
Thanks, Jeff, and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity of sharing some of our story with you today. Community Care North Hastings is looking for revenue generation as a not-for-profit organization, a bit of an oxymoron, but I hope through the slides you'll see why. That one. Thank you. Community Care is a not-for-profit that helps seniors remain in their homes through intervening programs such as Meals on Wheels, security calls, transportation, the volunteer transportation that was talked about this morning earlier, and exercise programs for seniors. 60% of our budget is provided by the Southeast LHIN, and the majority of the balance is in charitable dollars. There are 1,200 clients on our caseload. We have 4 full-time equivalent or 5 staff, 120 volunteers that deliver our programs, and we have a head office in Bancroft. And if you haven't heard of Maynooth and Cohill this morning, this is your opportunity to see that they're part of North Hastings. This is rural Ontario. Our demographics. The population of North Hastings and Highlands East is just over 15,000, so we're not talking about a big population. 56% of that population is of the age of 45 years or older. The land area covers 3,300 square kilometers, and our nearest major centers are Peterborough and Belleville, an hour and a half away each. The population density is 4.5 per square kilometer, very low. Our median family income, where the province is at 69,000, North Hastings is at 45,000. Those with no high school certificates or diploma or degree, the province is at 22%. North Hastings is at 33%. Our employment rate is at 46% compared to the province at 62%. Our unemployment rate is very high at 10%. And the percent in low income, the province at 14 and North Hastings is at 16%. So those demographics play a factor in terms of us thinking about revenue generation instead of charitable dollars. Our challenges are the financial demographics, the low income, the high unemployment, as well as our charitable dollar competitors. We have a huge list of them, as I'm sure you do in the city as well. But given the context of demographics and the number of charitable dollar competitors, this is a factor in terms of our context. We're certainly finding a lot of business donor fatigue. I can go to any business on any day and ask how many people have been in asking for some type of gift or some donation towards some cause, and the typical response would be at least 4 or 5 and maybe 10 that particular day. The health and social service demand is greater than the supply, obviously, and our traditional funding methods of asking for charitable dollars, I think in the context that I'm talking about, have outlived some of their usefulness. We can't always have our hand out asking for the next dollar. So hence, we've come to the point of saying, what else can we do in terms of bringing in revenue that does not continue to drain our community? So the questions for Queens: what other sustainable revenue-generating strategies are available for not-for-profit organizations? So if you take a look in North America and in Europe, what are the successful sustainable revenue generators for not-for-profits? And then beyond that, what factors do need to be considered in choosing this particular strategy? And secondly, not all of those strategies will work in North Hastings with our population of 15,000. So what is it then that will work in North Hastings? What models are the most likely to seed and give us the maximum amount of revenue generation? The results, we did get what we asked for. We have 9 models that are adaptable in North Hastings, and that came with a decision matrix, as you saw, and along in that matrix is a weighting scheme to help us as an organization determine those priorities. We also got an analysis of each model, including the strengths, weakness, and the potential revenues, as you've seen. And this decision matrix and weighting scheme is a tool that's easily transferable and expandable to other kinds of models and opportunities that we may be considering. So where does this knowledge fit for us? Presently, we're in the process of developing our next 5-year strategic plan. And the research that's been done, the models that have been presented, and the decision matrix will become an integral part of the formulation of our strategic plan. And the supplemental ideas related to enhancing awareness will help to strengthen our identity in the community. And our thanks to the students, Kate, Jaczko, and Dina Ali, for their contribution in this project, and to Queen's School of Business for allowing them to come and do this work on our behalf. We really appreciate the kind of work that they've done for us. They left us with some very quality pieces of work and things that we'll be able to use over the next number of years. So thank you.
Thanks, Gord. The noon hour sun is coming out, which our poor speakers are starting to bake a little. It means we're almost at lunch too. We have a couple more panelists to share though. Alongside this project, which was being run through the KISS project, the Monieson Centre was also conducting a research project with a similar organization in Prince Edward County. And so we're going to have the director, Wendy, come up and speak about sorry, not Wendy. Debbie, my apologies. Debbie is going to come forward. She's the Director of Community Care in Prince Edward County, and talk about her organization, some of the similar challenges they're facing, and some of the work that we've been doing with them. Come on forward, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. First, a thank you to Jeff for the invitation to participate in the conference today. I welcome the opportunity to share with you a bit about the journey of the Prince Edward County Community Care for Seniors Association toward what we call becoming entrepreneurial. Prince Edward County is technically an island. It's located just south of Belleville. It encompasses about 1,000 square kilometers and has over 800 kilometers of shoreline. The dunes of Sandbanks Provincial Park are a well-known destination for tourists, and in recent years, the development of about 50 vineyards and 30 wineries has also become a major draw for tourists to this small rural community. Prince Edward Community Care was established in 1977 in the county, as it's known to many. One of 27 pilot projects established across Ontario by the Ministry of Community and Social Services. The goal was to determine whether or not communities could be supported, seniors in those communities, by voluntary action to help them live at home. The agency was incorporated in 1979, and we grew over the years into a vibrant, community-based organization that is today, with a budget of over $1 million, 18 full and part-time staff, over 500 volunteers, and a reach that includes managing programs in all of the hospitals in Southeast Ontario. But I'm here today to talk to you about what we call the core agency. That's the agency that provides services to seniors in Prince Edward County. And that agency, the core part of the agency, has 6 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff members involved in the organization. We're now funded by the Ontario Ministry of Health through the Local Health Integration Network, and the core agency receives 60% of our budget from the government. The rest is generated through client fees. For some services, we receive donations, and we do fundraising. And it's that last word, fundraising, that led our board of directors to launch an effort toward what we call becoming entrepreneurial. So in the few minutes I have with you this morning, I'm going to give you a snapshot of the services of Prince Edward Community Care. I want to talk briefly about the challenges and the opportunities of working in a rural community, and try to snatch a glimpse into the future of Prince Edward Community Care. So just about our services, Community Care provides what are defined as community support services, and they're defined in the Ontario Long-Term Care Act. There are similar agencies across the province of Ontario, and you've had 2 executive directors speak here today, David Townsend and Gord from North Hastings. It's the staff members, the volunteers on the board, the service volunteers, and the support of the community that makes it possible for these agencies across the province to support seniors to live at home. And to capture how this works, I want to share with you the words of one of our coordinators, Lorna MacDonald. Lorna says, "When I think of an example of how we have helped someone live in their own home, I can't help but think of one particular client. She lived in an area that we don't regularly service. She lived at the end of the road, and although there was a neighbor who cared about her, they only lived there about half the time. She had family who loved her, and they were worried about her, but they lived 4 hours away by car. And they really wanted her to move to live with them, but she didn't want to do that. She didn't want to leave her home. She wanted to stay there and live in her own home. So for over 2 years, we provided hot Meals on Wheels. It was off of our regular route, but we were able to do that. We provided her with all of her transportation needs for shopping, banking, and medical appointments. We set her up with a volunteer who regularly made telephone reassurance calls. And our volunteers grew very attached to her. She eventually was admitted to a long-term care home, but she was admitted at the right time when she really needed to be. And Lorna continues saying, "When I think of her, I remember that it was everyone at Prince Edward Community Care who helped her live at home for those 2 years. It was the board who shouldered the responsibility of keeping the agency resourced and viable. It was the office staff who do all the administrative work, answering the phones and booking the rides. It was the coordinators who did the intake of the client and did all the intake and screening of the volunteers who supported her to live at home. And it was all of us who together help someone live in their own home for as long as possible." Now, this is only one example of services provided to people. In any one year, we touch the lives of almost 1,500 people through our programs and services. And just a bit about the challenges and opportunities. We have a total population in Prince Edward County of about 26,000 people and a population density of 24 people per square kilometer. That's quite a few more people than Gord has in North Hastings. Some Meals on Wheels delivery routes, nevertheless, are over an hour for the round trip. Being on an island and having a well-developed local identity does bode well for the recruitment of volunteers. And while we are constantly recruiting more volunteers, we are able to secure enough to provide the services we need. Our bigger challenge, though, is fundraising. Donations remain steady year over year, yet we seem unable to grow the donor base. Our board of directors is concerned about fundraising, and this led to the establishment of a community care foundation in 2009, and now all of our fundraising is carried out under the auspices of the foundation. A new supporter program was established and it garnered $8,900 in the 11 months. One fundraising activity is Tag Day, where dozens of volunteers stand on the street corners and sell tags. That raises about $3,000 a year, and the total hasn't budged in years. So it was in 2001 that we established a thrift shop on the main street of Picton. It's now a 5,000 square foot operation. It's run by 75 volunteers, open 5 days a week. And we gross about $70,000 a year and net close to $50,000 annually. But try as we might, we can't seem to grow the earnings from that venture either. Discussing this situation with Craig Desjardins, and I saw Craig come in a few minutes ago. Craig's the executive director of the Prince Edward, Lennox and Addington Community Futures Development Corporation. We call it PELA CFDC. That was one of the best things that happened to community care in recent years. The first grant we received from PELA directly helped solidify our marketing efforts, and it also resulted in a change to a vibrant new logo and a new look. We have new colors, marketing products, and I brought along some of our pamphlets, which you can pick up at the registration table to see this new look. We then held a strategic planning day with the board and staff and realized that we have all our eggs in one basket in the thrift shop, so to speak. The thrift shop is very successful and we depend on it. However, it's our major fundraising vehicle and the revenues are not growing. The funding received from the Southeast LIN brings significant restrictions on its use, and fundraising dollars just don't have those restrictions. And with more fundraising dollars, we could be more innovative in the way we help seniors live at home. Craig had one of his staff members complete a demographic study of Prince Edward County, looking specifically at the senior population. And we learned that Prince Edward is the only census division in Eastern Ontario where the net in-migration is primarily from somewhere other than the adjacent census division. People move to the county from the Greater Toronto area, and they bring with them a higher retirement income than those who are already resident in the county. This has increased the average retirement income in Prince Edward County significantly. We believe that these seniors also bring with them different expectations for services, and we wondered, can this be an opportunity for us? And now my concluding remarks, where I haul out my crystal ball and see if we can get a glimpse into the future of Prince Edward Community Care. Again, our local CFDC played a significant role in our new way of thinking. I wrote a proposal to PELA for assistance with moving into the future, and this became a partnership with the Monieson Centre with Yolanda and her staff and Jeff. The first step toward becoming entrepreneurial was to launch a research project, which was carried out by Dr. Knutsen, Adjunct Assistant Professor with the Queen's School of Policy Studies and the Queen's School of Business, and you'll be hearing from Dr. Knutsen next. Concurrent with the research project, we engaged Queen's Business Law Clinic to prepare a report for the board on just what can a not-for-profit do as we dip our toe into the puddle of operating a commercial business. What can we do and what can we not do? The next step was to involve Queen's Business Consulting, and we have 2 business students working right now on where we are to go next. Now, we do consider ourselves experts in the provision of community-based services to seniors with volunteer effort. Turning our thinking to becoming entrepreneurial in a new way has been both challenging and invigorating. We have a highly skilled and experienced board of directors. We have a retired assistant deputy minister who also has been chair of Craig's CFDC. We have a chartered accountant, an educator, administrator, who has experience on the LIN board. The LIN's our funder. We have a retired not-for-profit administrator, and we have business people, both working and retired. And the lively discussions and the bumping of views has been a tremendous learning experience for all of us. Becoming entrepreneurial for a not-for-profit means thinking differently, and it brings change and possibly risk, maybe a lot of risk, more than a not-for-profit is used to. So you might be thinking, okay, Debbie, so get to the point. What are you going to do? And that's where my crystal ball goes foggy. It has taken substantial support from Pella CFDC and our many friends here at Queen's to help us get to where we are today. We are a changed organization, even if we don't take another step. We've learned just how differently the not-for-profit and the commercial sector think and work. And we're better for that knowledge, and we will put it to good use. Our board and staff members have drawn closer in our resolve to support seniors to live at home during the discussions that were not always easy when our worldviews bumped against each other. We're stronger, and we will survive whatever comes our way. I started saying that we're becoming entrepreneurial, and we're not there yet. The Queen's Business Consulting students are presenting their findings to the board at the end of the month. There are decisions to make. One thing is certain, however, our board and staff of community care remain committed to our vision, the freedom and dignity of choice, the comfort of home, and a passion for volunteers. Thank you to Pella CFDC, the Monieson Centre, Queen's Business Law Clinic, Queen's Business Consulting for supporting Prince Edward Community Care on this journey toward becoming entrepreneurial. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Debbie. And our final panelist, as Debbie alluded to, is Dr. Wenjue Knutsen. She's cross-appointed at the School of Policy Studies and the School of Business here, and we're very glad to have her offer some comments about where research in the academic world intersects with the issues we've been discussing.
Thank you, everybody. We heard lots about enterprising nonprofits. So I want to start my presentation with a little personal story. It just happened last weekend. I was invited to go to a cooking show by my friends, and I never attended a cooking show before, so I went there and we sat down and they had a little show and we all ended up buying some stuff for the kitchen. And then at the end of the show, the lady started talking. She said, well, you know, if you are interested in hosting another show in your house, you will get a certain percentage of whatever they're making, I think like 10% of the profits or whatever. So I said to my friends, most of my friends are academic Chinese living in Kingston, and most of them are members of Chinese Kingston Association. So I said, well, what a great idea. What if our association hosts a show and use that show as a fundraiser? I was just entertaining the idea because I study this kind of stuff. And my friends got all agitated. They say, no, we cannot do that. This is a business. You know, you cannot use our good, hard Chinese culture to promote your business. And we had a little bit argument, and I was not able to convince them. So this is my problem in cooking show. Well, it's sort of use your friendship with, say, social capital to foster her business. But why can't we do that in a Chinese nonprofit organization? I do not know. So I think for nonprofit organizations that wants to embark on this enterprising route, you probably will encounter similar problem like what I did. The safer method is if you do charitable purpose organizations such as a thrift shop, your problem will be less than if you want to do a cooking show, or if you want to open a coffee shop, or if you want to open a franchise for Tim Hortons, you will have more problems because it's almost like a political it's almost like a political problem because people have different values, right? It's the liberal view versus the conservative view. So our existing literature has limited knowledge to offer about how to solve these issues, but I will talk a little bit about this issue today and utilizing whatever we have already got in our knowledge about this issue. So I guess the first two slides are finished. Well, I think the slide is slightly different from this, but anyway. Okay. First, I will start with background. Why do we do this? I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we're here, probably we all want to do it. Just to confirm, our view is it's unfortunate that nonprofit organizations are running out of money, and the government does not look like they're going to contribute a lot more in the future. In global sense, we have this shift since 1970s, started perhaps 1980s to early 1990s. We shifted sort of from most English-speaking countries shifted from a more liberal view political ideology to a conservative view, so which the consequences, a lot of budget cuts, the first hit is nonprofit organizations. And the government is not really clear to say, look, you guys go to do business now, but that's their undertone. And we face lots of problems because we are so used to values like charitable or equity values or caring, and now all of a sudden, how can we try to mix that kind of set of value with profits making a merit-based competition, and this is pretty hard. And for a nonprofit organization, if you're not going to do a thrift shop, if you do anything more businessy like thrift shop, you will have this cultural conflict. Second slide talking about also background. Why do we want to have this kind of enterprising going on? And most of you probably have already know there are lots of constraints come with public funding. Funding is just like the core problem. And from the core problem of funding that's not from you, it's from external source like government, you will generate a lot of more other problems, such as funding asks you to, for example, I'm not going to talk all of them, comes with lots of accountability requirements. So that is to say you have to file lots of reports, lots of strict accounting requirements, and that takes a lot of time away from our service provision, but this is the strain come with government funding. And there will also create lots of public constraint about what you can do with the money. As nonprofit executive director or board members, you probably want to do a lot of things, but you cannot use that government money to do that. And eventually, their anxiety too. You do not know what's the policy going to be tomorrow, and if the government is going to change again, because we are working in the sector, and we cannot know exactly what's going on in the provincial or federal government in their office, what's the politics like every day, and predict our future. So all of this create pressure for us to try to find other extra sources for income. I can't see this. So I'm going to talk about the slides that talking about some dangers. I can't see very well. I believe it's the perils of enterprising nonprofits. Yeah.
I suggest that you just...
Oh, okay. So, okay. So I'm on the perils of enterprising nonprofits, these slides. It is not as easy. If we find a business model, and doesn't mean we can just jump at it and implement right away. There are some problems we could encounter, and here list a bunch of them. And today we're going to talk about the ones in red: cultural conflicts, clash between business operations and nonprofit operations. So how do we bring up these changes? First is you cannot just jump right on your plan. You have to have a preparation period, which we call it unfreezing your existing culture. So my guess is most of our existing culture is very much caring focused and equity focused, and people sort of all care about each other and have sort of family-like atmosphere at workplace. And in that kind of situation, people probably will be your ears will hurt if you talk about profits, or you will talk about, we gotta start business, because many people went in nonprofits because they do not like those kind of profit-driven business practice in business sector. So one thing you have to do is prepare your staff, and first create vision. So perhaps in many cases you would think the business vision is conflict with our charitable goals. How can I sell hot dogs to make money, and all of turn around and say, I do not care about money, I only care about you, my client's well-being. So it sounds like a conflict, but there is a way to make it not as contradictory to each other. I listed on the slides is, think about income-making goal and our charitable services as like a loop. So you make more money from your business operation, and then you use that money to feed your charitable services. Because you have more money, you can provide more services, you can provide, help more people. So if you have this charitable purpose in your organization, at the same time that charitable values provide a cause for you to operate your business. So that's what we call, from a business aspect, it's called a social responsibility of business. So you make this loop, so these two goals, at least from your vision, does not look like necessarily contradict to each other. So what's important is not only you need to understand that, or your staff, or your special, let's say, people in the very important key positions also have to understand that. And I would say perhaps eventually you won't get 100% of your people on board, but try to make as many as you can, they will understand your vision. So like my friends, I tried to talk to her about making cooking show and she couldn't understand, so I was failed in that aspect. So second, after you sort of prepare your staff, we say after you unfreeze your current organizational culture, you will try to let's say, started to embark on those kind of implementing your change. And there are a list of strategies you can use. For example, create a sense of urgency about need of change. You can provide financial statistics to your staff to show you, look, this is our problem. Many managers or executive directors know very well why you are forced into this route to do a business, but many staffs do not know, right? So, and your board members may not know. So try to collect data statistics to convince them this is why you are doing. These people have to understand it. It is a very new and let's say a strange concept. And also you need to create eventually legitimacy for your business plan. People have to buy in, and otherwise you will have problems. And the next slide is implementing the change. Again, there's a list of strategies you can use. The goal is implementing change is a behavior process. You have to coach, use yourself as a role model. You set different incentives and reward system to encourage your staff to do this kind of change with you. And it doesn't happen overnight. So their strategy, I'm not going to read it. I think you can. It's pretty straightforward to understand. And for the easiest ones, you should jump right on it and make the change. And last slides, refreezing the new culture. So, well, that's, if you are at this stage, you are 80% done, right? And one thing is, say, initially necessary turnovers. So I would say, don't feel you failed if, let's say, 20% of staff cannot switch their mind. And they just cannot understand. They've been in this sector for 20 years. They don't understand why you are doing business now. And this hurts their identity as a nonprofit staff. In that case, it's okay. It's not you. It's okay to let those people go. And when you hire new people for your business operation, you want to make sure you only hire people that support both charitable goal and the business goal. So these people can help you to build up new culture. So for the interest of time, I have to stop right here, but you got the slides and they're a very detailed list of strategies you can use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wenjue. We have just a few minutes for questions. Any questions for any of our panelists? Yeah, Gay.
Hello, I'm Gay Hamilton from the CFDC in Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. That's in Cornwall. I'd like to say something, and I'd like to ask a question as well. First of all, Dr. Knutsen, thank you. It's about time. I'm a big proponent of social enterprise and fund diversification, and I feel that nonprofits, not just charitable organizations, but the whole nonprofit sector needs to operate on more solid business principles from A to Z, whether you're operating a business or not. And that is because of the accountability and the constraints on the funding that we receive now. Nonprofits that operate on solid business grounds have a little easier time transitioning into the social enterprise venue, if you like. And the question I wanted to ask was, the more you get into social enterprise that are based on volunteer labor, and the suggestions and the models that you put forward today are excellent ones. They work. They've been used elsewhere. So I wish you a great amount of luck with those. You will need many, many more volunteers, and volunteer recruitment is really difficult these days. There is an impact. The more volunteers you use, there is an impact on staffing, because volunteers need to be coordinated. And the more volunteers you have, probably the more staffing positions, not in huge proportions, but have you addressed that in your models? Have you gotten there yet in terms of augmenting your staffing as a result of generating more revenue? It may sound like a contradiction, but it's really not.
Yes, I think the issue is in looking at increased volunteers needed, did maybe the students model or Debbie or Gord of your organizations looked at the need for staffing changes as well?
In the model that we're using for our what we call heritage shop or thrift shop, we have a large number of volunteers that do need a lot of work in terms of maintenance and upkeep kind of thing. And that happens on a fairly regular basis in a very informal way as one of our strategies in terms of inviting them to potlucks every 6 weeks. And that seems to provide an opportunity for them to do a lot of venting, but also a lot of problem solving. So we've used that as a very specific strategy in terms of maintaining that particular program. We've also used, within that same program, a group of 4 individuals that we call our management team. And we pay them a very token amount, but they're designated as managers. And they're the ones that really carry the bulk of managing the volunteers in that particular shop. And I think as we move forward with these kinds of models, we'll be looking towards more and more of those management type volunteers that will help us run these particular programs. Certainly they're not paid at anywhere that's equitable to what we would pay a staff, but coming at it from a volunteer basis, they're very willing to do that kind of work and take on that kind of responsibility.
That's a very good point that you make with not-for-profits operating as a more traditional business model. And that's one of the learnings that we're taking away from this experience that we've been through at Prince Edward Community Care to date. We already run what you might call a social enterprise with the thrift shop, 5,000 square feet, 75 volunteers, no paid staff on site at all. That's not what we're looking at continuing to do. We're continuing that enterprise, but we're not looking at setting up something else like that with volunteers. We are looking at more of what you might call a traditional business. However, we're not at the point yet where we can say what it is exactly we're going to do.
Kate and Dina, would you have any comments about volunteer recruitment and any recommendations you made along those lines?
Well, I think when it comes to volunteers, as was mentioned, you really have to think in terms of the big picture. How can we coordinate? How can we make sure that everyone's communicated to appropriately? Because from a volunteer perspective, getting volunteers to come back means that the process has to be as easy as possible for them. So as we mentioned in our presentation, we really wanted to kind of use the youth as like the labor force, essentially, so have those high school students come in and do the work. But in terms of the volunteer coordination, as Gord mentioned, having those people in those lower paid positions between a volunteer and a paid staff member is very beneficial. And as you work up the levels, I think at some point someone needs to be paid to do what they're doing. So that's kind of the discoveries that we made through our process.
Great, thanks very much. Time for maybe one question, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Kim McNeil. I'm from Trent Hills, visiting your lovely city of Kingston. Dr. Knutsen, I think my question would be to you. Have you considered what kind of strategy you use for, in a small community where you have local businesses, that these types of new ventures will potentially compete with? I'm not sure if that's the right person to put it to.
So are you asking what happened if your enterprise, social enterprise, will be competing with small business, local business?
For instance, your kitchen, your kitchen idea.
Yeah, I would think that's, even if we're not business, if we're a non-profit organization, we're still in sort of a competition relationship with local small business that provide similar services. For example, for community support services, you could be in competition. Let's say if you decided to do transportation, you could be in competition with taxi, for example, or you could be in competition with people who want to be volunteer driver but use that as a means to make income. I think this is an ongoing tension, but it probably would get worse if you actually claim you are going to do business now. I would think you really need to manage perhaps impression management. You have to communicate with the community your cause of doing business. It's not purely profit making, and you need to communicate with all the stakeholders that the reason you are doing that is try to use that to sustain your own core agencies, nonprofit charitable services. Again, it won't be 100%. You won't be able to persuade 100% of everybody in the community, but it probably will work. And also, I think eventually this will be an ongoing problem, and I don't think we can just eliminate that kind of impression. It will be there, and it's part of the advantage of nonprofit organizations as well. And again, depends on how you incorporate your business. You might have to pay tax as well. In that case, this competition is fair. It's sort of unfair only if you will grant a tax exemption status for your business operation because you're a nonprofit or you're charitable. So you need to deal with your competitors.
Great. Well, we want to thank all of our panelists and for sharing in this session and sharing their knowledge. So let's give a round of applause to them.